for a few months in a retreat centre in the Spanish mountains. He's not there at the moment. He's in Bristol, not quite as exotic. But Saccanama left Nottingham to go and do what was going to start in a few days, I think, a master's at Schumacher College in engaged ecology. But sadly, because of COVID, that's been postponed. I think he's hoping it'll start in April. But yeah, it's really great to have Saccanama back. So those of you that don't know Saccanama, I'll just say very little bit about him. Saccanama is very warm. He's got a big heart. He's very warm, very friendly. And many of you will know him as the person that always welcomed you on the door at the Buddhist Center. So obviously we can't quite do that at the moment, but that was something Saccanama was very good at, was sort of warmly welcoming people into the center. And he has a lot of care for people and very strong faith. His faith in the Dharma is very strong. And he also has a real clarity. So he has a lot of clarity, and I think tonight we'll benefit from that. So Saccanama has also studied the Dharma very, very thoroughly, especially Bhante's presentation of the Dharma. And because of that, when he presents the Dharma, he does that with a lot of clarity and a lot of heart. So I think we're in for a treat. Lovely to have you, Saccanama.
Great. Thank you very much, Kisla Devi. Well, it's lovely to see so many friends from Nottingham. A lot of you I haven't seen since August, September time when I left. It's also lovely to see some new faces, people I don't know. So hello to those of you I haven't met before. So yes, I'm going to just plunge straight into this material on views. So Kusala Devi said you were exploring a theme on views and wisdom. So that's why I chose this topic. So I'm going to hopefully define what a view is, particularly what a wrong view and what a right view is. And I'm going to look at this, what's called reaction practice, which I'll explain in a bit, which is a way of working with our views when they get pressed, when our buttons get pressed. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to talk for half an hour tops, and then we're going to break into groups, and you'll have a chance to explore this theme of reaction practice. So the language of views is, it goes right back to the very early part of the tradition, the Buddhist tradition. It's one of the, well, it's the very first stage of the Noble Eightfold Path. It doesn't get more central to the Dharma than that. The Noble Eightfold Path is the fourth of the Four Noble Truths, goes right back to the historical Buddha. The Pali term is Samma Ditti. Ditti is the word for view. And Samma is often just translated as right. Sangha actually makes the point in his lectures on the Eightfold Path. He talks about Samma can also mean whole, perfect, or complete, not just right. So he uses the term perfect vision to translate Samma Ditti, which is also more often translated as right view. And I think he does that in order to imply that it's not just something kind of conceptual or rational. It's something, right view can go into perfect vision, which is sort of supra-rational, as it were. Yeah. There are two very important suttas in the Pali Canon which explore views in quite a bit of depth. The very first sutta of the Digha Nikaya, the first sutta of the Pali Canon, effectively is the Brahmajala Sutta, which is about the net of views, and the Buddha outlines 62 different ways that people interpret their experience, which fall into eternalism or nihilism. So he explores it pretty exhaustively. There's also a sutta called the Samma Ditti Sutta, the Right View Sutta, or Perfect Vision Sutta in the Majjhima Nikaya, which explores right view in terms of, largely in terms of the Four Noble Truths, holding to the Four Noble Truths as an expression of right view. So when we're looking at this language of views, we're dealing with things that go right back to Siddhartha Gautama, to Shakyamuni Buddha himself, things that he articulated and talked about in some depth. Yeah. But what I want to do this evening is introduce some material on views from Subhuti, who's one of my teachers. He's my preceptor and one of my teachers. He's been exploring this material in different contexts for quite a while. And I was on a retreat with him a couple of years ago, where he gave these definitions of view and wrong view and right view and reaction practice. So I'm basically introducing what he's taught me with some added reflections of my own. So I'm going to screen share. So just get this up. I can't see anyone at the moment. So can someone just unmute and tell me that you can see that?
Yeah. Yeah,
Good.
we can do it.
Thank you. So this is Subhuti's definition of view. It's a little bit more elaborate than some of the standard definitions. So some people find these kind of definitions helpful, if some people maybe not so, but at least it just introduces the topic, and we'll go on to reaction practice as a way of working with all this shortly. So his definition of view, of ditthi, is a view is a charged interpretation. So this word charged is very important. When we're talking about views, we're not dealing with something that's just cool and abstract and removed from our experience. It's charged. It has an emotional, even physical effect upon us. Yeah. So views, it's just lost it, hasn't it? I'll get it back up. There we go. Yeah, it's very important to realize that the views are emotionally and physiologically embodied. They're not abstract. And then he talks about it's an interpretation or an explanation or an account or a story. We often use the word story, you know, that we have our stories about our life or about our experience, the things we tell ourselves, or a myth. In this sense, a myth is an archetypal story. That's what's meant here, not something false that we sometimes, in the way we sometimes use the word myth. It can be expressed or implied. So, you know, it might just be hidden within what you're saying without being fully articulated. Yeah, it's formulated or felt, and it can be conscious or unconscious. So again, one of the important things to be aware of with views in Buddhism is that we're not, sorry, there's something going on with the screen share, which I'm just going to have to keep.
No, we could still see you then, Saccanama. That was
It's only going on my screen then, that's the problem. As long as you can see the screen.
Yep.
Yeah, so views can be unconscious. They're often things that we don't know that we hold, or are not fully aware that we hold. Yeah, and they're interpretations of our experience in terms of if you know the 5 skandhas, one of the basic categories of Buddhist thought. Views are all in the area of samnya, of perception. Yeah, so they're beyond labeling. That samnya is about how we interpret our experience. So that's the basic definition of a view. Yeah, it's how we make sense of and interpret our experience. And those views can be things that are lightly held, or they can be things that can be very fixed and settled in our experience, or they can be things that we're provisionally exploring. But they're how we make sense of all the actual experience that comes to us. Yeah. So then he goes on to define, I'm just going to look at what his definition of a wrong view and a right view. So Buddhism categorizes views as ones that are wrong, that are actually going to lead to perpetuate our unenlightenment, our delusion, or right views which are going to support our practice. Can you see that clearly?
We can still see definition of view. You're scrolling down. Yep.
So have you got a wrong view in front of you?
Yep.
Yeah, good. So this is Subhuti going on to elaborate and define more clearly. So a wrong view is an interpretation. There we go. Sorry about this. A wrong view is an interpretation that is not in accordance with reality. Ayoniso is often translated as unwise. So a wrong view is an interpretation that is unwise. It's not actually directly in tune with the way things are. But it gives us a sense of control through grasping onto our interpretation. The Buddha makes a lot about our attachment to views. Views are significantly about how we hold to them. Sorry, this is, I'm keep losing this myself. Yeah, so wrong views are all about this, that they're an attempt to try and order our experience in a way that gives us a sense of control over our experience. And this helps restore and renew our ego identity that we're trying to shore up in the face of an impermanent, insubstantial, unsatisfactory world. Yeah, and it gives a way of attending to experience that leads to actions, karma, that merely produce further suffering for us and for others. And it sets up more and more tendencies that just bind us into samsara, into the unenlightened world, into unenlightened experience. Yeah, I can send these definitions around. I can send them to Gareth, and he can send them out to you. So if you want them to refer to, I can do that for you. So the important thing there is, yeah, it's about, wrong view is about us trying to control our experience in some way. Establish a sense of control over this changing, impermanent world that we live in. Yeah, and that view leads us to act in ways that are unskillful, that cause suffering for us and suffering for others. So again, views are not some disembodied sort of abstraction that don't affect things. They have a very, very direct effect on how we are in the world and on our actions, on the levels of suffering that we have for and cause for ourselves and others. And then he has this definition of a right view. Right view is an interpretation that is in accordance with reality. So it's actually in line with the way things are. Yeah. It allows faith to flourish. So this is the charge associated with the right view. The charge that's associated with the wrong view is a kind of craving or aversion, but faith is what accompanies right view. It's the emotional counterpart of right view. And if you hold right views, it supports the development of faith in the Buddha, Dharma and Sangha primarily. And that gives you the chance to transcend ego identity, and it gives you a way of attending to experience that leads to you acting in ways that bring increasing happiness for yourself and for others. Yeah. And this sets up tendencies, the Dharma Shrota, that's the stream of the Dharma, that help to liberate us from existence. Yeah. So I hope you can see that definition and just get a sense of it. So right view is crucial. It's the cognitive counterpart of faith, or faith is the emotional counterpart of right view. And it's right view that gives us the basis to act skillfully and act in ways that are going to bring happiness for us and happiness for others. Wrong view will perpetuate our unskillfulness and lead us to continue acting in unskillful ways. Yeah. That's a definition of wrong and right view. It's one that Subhuti's been working on. I find it a helpful one. It's a little bit fuller than some of the traditional definitions. So in a way, the whole development of wisdom, which you'll be looking at after a couple of weeks on meditation, in Buddhism, it's talked about moving from wrong view to right view, and thence to perfect vision, thence to something that is beyond conceptualization and is fully awakened, his bodhi is enlightened, as it were. So what I want to do now is just introduce a way to work with our views. So Subhuti came up with this, what he calls reaction practice. Are you still seeing something? Kusala Devi, can you just...
No, I can just see you now. Oh, no, now we can. Yep.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I'm sorry about this. I'm doing it on an iPad. I haven't got my computer with me and it's being a bit temperamental.
Maybe we can see it now.
So, yeah, reaction practice is, it comes out of Shantideva. So that reading we had at the beginning of the meditation, Shantideva talks about kshanti, patience or forbearance, as it's usually translated, as being the way to work with hatred. But that hatred itself destroys all the good of the spiritual practice that we build up. So kshanti is about not reacting to circumstances that provoke our ill will, our impatience, our frustration, our anger, our aversion, our hatred. Yeah. So that's what reaction practice is aiming to do. It's giving us a way to work with our tendency to react. I'm going to start reacting to this iPad any minute now. So he gives 5 stages of reaction practice. So this is a very helpful way. Again, I can send this around, but if you're going to be leading a group, you might want to just quickly make a note, at least of the first bits in black for this, because we'll look at them in the groups. So the first thing that Subhuti is a very helpful little set of 5 things that can just give us a chance to work with reactions, our buttons, when our buttons get pressed. First thing Subhuti encourages us to do, so we need to recognize that we're having a reaction. Yeah, recognize it as a reaction, not justify it, not just think we're right, it's all up, we're good, they're wrong. Yeah, we need to actually see it as a reaction. He makes this qualification: even if you are right, yeah, you're still reacting, and that reaction often has a physical impact. Yeah, so when you react, you have physical signs of your reaction. So you might have just muscles tensing in some part of your body. I'm going to give you an example of this in my own experience, but I'll just briefly outline it and then come back to that. You might have that experience where your voice goes up, when somebody says something to you and you go, oh yes, that's fine, when what you really mean is that's not fine at all. Yeah. Your voice goes up an octave, giving away the fact that you're not quite happy with what's just been said. So notice these signs, these physical signs, tensing, voice going up, maybe just wanting to withdraw physically, you're wanting to back away. Yeah. So really key thing for working with this is mindfulness of body. We need to be mindful of our body at all times, but particularly if we're going to start to notice our reactions, notice when somebody presses our buttons, and all too quickly we can end up getting into an argument with them, or something that just spirals into something not very creative. Yeah, so that's the first point. Second one is we need to see this reaction as an opportunity. Yeah, this is actually key to the whole of spiritual life. I think we need to avoid seeing our reaction. It's easy, well, if you're like me anyway, it's easy to be very critical of yourself, to think that because you're having a reaction, you're not practicing very well, you're not practicing very hard, you're not a very good Buddhist, your practice isn't up to much. Yeah, you get all those kind of self-critical things coming in. So what you need to do in this situation is instead of seeing it as a problem, think, I'm having a reaction. That's great. This gives me a chance to learn something about myself and potentially to free myself from something that is restrictive, getting in the way of being able to respond creatively to this person. It's something that's causing me and others dukkha. Yeah. So really good. We need to turn towards our experience more without judgment and see it as an opportunity, see it as something we can learn from. If you can do this stage, you're doing really well on the spiritual path. It can take quite a long time to be able to not label our experience as bad in some way or think that we're wrong for having a reaction. Yeah. The third one is then you need to be able to start to feel your way into it. So usually with a reaction, again, we want to pull away. We start judging it. We don't want to deal with it. It's painful. It has a painful feeling tone with it. So you need to begin again to sort of turn your experience towards, or turn yourself towards your experience more and get engaged with the experience and the sensations that are going on. That gives you the opportunity to start to learn, yeah, of what might be being triggered. So Subhuti talks about feel your way into it, turn towards the experience and sensations, separate the feeling that you're having, the painful, aversive feeling that you don't want, from the trigger for the feeling. So that trigger, whatever it is, whatever somebody said or what you've heard or whatever's happened in your experience, that's the trigger. Just being able to distinguish your own feeling from that trigger. Yeah. The feeling is yours. The trigger may not be. Yeah. So it's learning to be able to separate that. This again comes down to kind of mindfulness in a basic way. Often we can't necessarily do this, certainly in early days of practice, spiritual practice generally, and in reaction practice, you might not be able to do this in the moment. You have to do it afterwards, when you've had the reaction, when you've taken yourself, time has elapsed and you're away from the trigger. Then you might talk about it with your friends, start to try and explore it again. Again, not see it as a problem, something that you need to be averse to or get rid of. Actually tell your friends, talk about, say, when this happened, this started to occur for me, yeah, and tease it out. That's the way you're going to learn. It's the way you're going to be able to gain something from this, yeah. So I hope you're able to get at least a good enough sight of this before it blanks out again. The next stage Subhuti identifies is there may well be a positive value that is being threatened. That this is getting into the territory of the view, the underlying view or value that you might have. Subhuti uses the term the positive value that's being threatened. I've said value is used here, but that value might be tied up with or expressed in a view as well. Yeah. This is kind of key again to understanding what it is, what the button is for you that is getting pressed and triggered. And then the final stage, I mean, this is insight practice. This reaction practice in terms of the Triratna system of spiritual practice is a kind of spiritual death practice. It's a way of identifying our own self-view and the limitations we have around that and letting go of it. So this last stage may be a bit, it's a sort of relatively advanced stage. It's actually you're starting to reflect upon the fact that the view that you have is conditioned and impermanent. You don't have to defend it, even though you've started to try to defend it. Yeah. So that's 5 stages of reaction practice. Again, I'll send it to Gareth or Kusala Devi, and you can send this around. I found it a very helpful way to helpful little exploration of what goes on in our minds and how we can practice with it. So I want to just by way of hopefully clarifying it for you, I'm going to just describe my own experience with this in one particular area. often these kind of reactions and our buttons getting pressed, often it's the people we're closest to, the people we live with, the people we work with, our family, that can press our buttons most strongly. And it's often good to work with this with those people you actually know. I'm going to do it with a public figure, not someone I know personally, just because it's quite topical and it might be relevant to some of you, but just as a way of exploring it. So I'm going to talk about this in relation to someone called Donald Trump, who I'm sure I'm not the only one who has a reaction to. So the first stage is recognize it as a reaction. Often there are physical signs. So sometimes when I'm reading or hearing about, I think I'm going to stop sharing now and just you can just have me, and I'll go through the stages separately. Actually, I can have different responses when I hear about some of the things that Donald Trump's up to, whether it's telling his lies or inciting violence or whatever it might be. If I'm in a state of kind of anxiety or insecurity or fear, what I'll often notice is a tensing in my thighs, my inner thighs, area around the lower chakra, if you don't mind me getting into the language of chakras, sort of root chakra stuff where I'm just sort of tightening up. If I'm not in a state of anxiety or fear or insecurity, what I can often notice is more of a sort of a sense of something tightening behind my heart, in my upper back. I hear about some of the things he's up to, and I can feel my shoulders, the area around the back of my heart, just sort of starting to tighten, my body language lifting and moving as if towards that, in a sort of defensive kind of posture. So I'm just sort of trying to identify that's what goes on in my body. You might have different things go on in your body. It's quite good to get to know how this works within your own body, but mindfulness of the body, what's going on, noticing how the painful feeling tone associated with it manifests in your body. Yeah. Then the second thing is recognize it as an opportunity. So it's very easy when a button gets pressed, in this case, whatever Donald Trump's doing, telling lies or whatever, I can just want to get into righteous indignation and just say, oh God, that guy, he's whatever it might be. So it's actually starting to say, well, there's something going on here for me, isn't it? It actually matters to me. Why does it matter to me? Starting to turn towards it. It's like, okay, so somebody's doing something in the world that I'm not liking. Well, let's get interested in that. Get interested. This is another key thing in spirituality. Get interested in your own experience. Why are you having this one? So maybe you don't get wound up with Donald Trump. You might get wound up with somebody else. But for me, that can happen. So why is it happening? Yeah. Then there's trying to separate the trigger from the feeling, and then moving to start to try and identify the values that underlie it, the value in me that might be being threatened. So with Donald Trump, I'll just take one of the things, he's known for lying. The Washington Post has this long list of all the lies that he's told. They fact-checking thing. And I find that difficult, that there's a public figure who is just blatantly, shamelessly, unrepentantly lying. That contravenes a kind of a value that's dear to me, that I cherish, I hold to. And then the fifth stage is where Subhuti encourages us to, reflect on the fact that we don't have to defend that view. It's impermanent, it's conditioned. I've actually had some other reflections that explore, as I've tried to make sense of what goes on for me when I'm hearing about Donald Trump and what's going on. I'm just going to try and share some of those with you. So this is my attempt to reflect on my experience and learn about myself and free myself of something that's causing me. I have a tense relationship with Donald Trump, who I don't even know personally. So one of the things it plays on a view that I have. I don't want to live in a world where there are people who have power over me in the kind of wider sense. Yeah, I mean, I have power to affect my own actions, but I don't have the power that Donald Trump or other political big business figures have. Yeah, I don't have that degree of power. I don't mind if there's someone like acting like Donald Trump and they're not president of the United States and they don't have much power. That's not such an issue for me. Yeah, but the fact that he is one of the most powerful men in the world is not something I find that difficult. You know, he has power, I don't. Brings in this whole thing of power and relationships of power. But underneath that, there's a view that I have of well, if I don't know if you know the Wheel of Life, there's the depiction of the 6 realms in the Wheel of Life. One of them is the realm of the Titans or Asheras. That's the realm of people like Donald Trump or politicians, big business people. They actually, you know, they worship success, they despise failure. They're highly competitive, they're unscrupulous about gaining power. That's the way things are in that realm. So one of the things I've had to work with, you know, with all the stuff that Donald Trump's doing is like, I'm in a world where there are titans who have a lot more power and influence than me over what's going on in the world. And a lot of that influence is not good. It's not ethical. It's not skillful in a Buddhist sense. Yeah. Now I can get, because I've got a view around that, I can get into not wanting it. So what I've had to realize is like, well, this is the packaged view of human life from a Buddhist point of view. We have to just take on board that I'm a human being and I live in a world where people do these things and I can't directly control it. There are people in the world who are acting very unskillfully and have a lot of influence and a lot of power. I have to kind of accept that and come to terms with it rather than getting into righteous indignation or aversion or denial or not wanting it to be there, not wanting it to be part of my experience. I've had to just accept, well, I'm in a world where there are these people who've got a lot of power and they're not using it skillfully. And that means I have to come in touch with reality, with the way things are on a much deeper level. I don't want that. I really do not want to be in a world where people are acting like that so shamelessly, so unethically. And yet I am in that world. Yeah. So this is what I mean about working with a view and sort of uncovering this view that Donald Trump, for me anyway, presses. So I could have just stayed in the righteous indignation, but I've chosen to kind of reflect on it. It's like, what's this doing? What's it pressing? Why am I getting so uptight? What does it say about underlying views that I hold? I want to be in a fairer world. I want to be in a world where people are going to act ethically. Actually, I'm not. I'm in a world where people are violent towards each other, unskillful towards each other, do a lot of harm to each other. That impacts me directly and indirectly. I have to come to terms with it. Yeah. I think I hope that kind of at least begins to tease out what this reaction practice might look like. I say I've chosen a public figure. I could have chosen Catherine, who I'm currently staying with, and you know, some of the things that she does, the kind of press buttons of mine. I'm sure we all there are people in our lives, often it's the people that we're closest to. So what I'm suggesting that you do in the groups is that you at least see if you can begin to connect with these 5 stages of reaction practice. So if you can identify, might be something that's happened just quite recently, maybe today or in the last week, where you've felt this reaction, and just see if you can kind of connect with those stages, identifying the physical responses, trying to see it as an opportunity, turning towards it, and then trying to identify the value and the view that might underlie your reaction. So just see if you can have a go. You might not be able to do it fully, but just see if you can. And yeah, well, I wish you luck with it. It's a very, very helpful practice, this. Gritty and tough, can be freeing and very liberating. So I don't know who's doing the breakout groups, but that's what I've got to say.
Great. Thank you, Saccanama. Loads to reflect on there and talk about.